What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Blood on the Razor Wire TV, where we bring it to you real and we bring it to you raw. If you haven't already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, share the video, and make sure you leave a comment. We got a special guest on today. You know, he was a bodyguard for some very important people, some celebrities. He went on to become an international arms dealer, and then at the end of the day, he ended up where? In federal prison, but we'll get into that. Evan, tell the people who you are, where you're from, and talk a little bit about you, bro.
Well, I am the product of an immigrant. My family is from Israel. I was born in Las Vegas, Nevada. I grew up here for the most part, and I grew up in, I'm not sure what would be called below a low-income family, but I was so poor growing up that I really didn't even know what poor was. So coming from nothing, kind of the world was my oyster, I guess, so to speak. So I really wanted to try to get into everything I could and try to succeed every way I could possibly, do that. So I had to learn everything on my own growing up. So this is probably why things eventually went the way they went at the end of the day with all this. So, I mean, how you go for it, man. I'm waiting for these questions.
It's all good. So let's talk about this, right? I mean, you end up in the Marine Corps. How much time did you do in the Marines?
I did my contract. Just my first bid. That was it. My first few years, and that was it. And I got out. I was a single father for a long time. Had a child at 17. So it's kind of the reason I joined the Marine Corps.
So a guy like you get out, you end up becoming a bodyguard for, some people. I mean, you've been around Floyd Mayweather. You've been around, I think, Lady Gaga, some other people. Who are some of the people that you were a bodyguard for? And tell us how you got involved in it. How do you go from the Marines and being a single dad to being a bodyguard for celebrities, so to speak?
I got really lucky. I have an older sister, and at the time, she was dating a bunch of basketball players and dating a bunch of rappers and stuff like that. So I got out of the Marine Corps, and a lot of these guys that she was around, obviously we're on a much higher level in life, and we're always concerned with who was around them. And so one day, one of her boyfriends asked me if I'd be interested in doing some bodyguard work. And I said, no, I never thought about it.
Hold on. I got to stop because the people are going to want to know. Who was her boyfriend at the time?
Oh, man. I don't know if you remember a guy named Spud Webb, but he was
Of course we know who Spud Webb is, bro.
Really? Okay, yeah. Most younger people today probably wouldn't know who Spud Webb was, but
he's such a little fella. He probably needed a bodyguard.
Yeah, it's it was a different time. He would always come to the house. Back in the day, wearing no socks with your shoes was like kind of this trend. My mom, being from Israel, would always make fun of him and wonder if he had any money and ask him if he needed socks all the time. So it was one of those things where, being around different people doing different things was newer for me. But all these new trends, all these new things, at the end of the day, it got to a point where someone said, hey, would you mind hanging around this person and making sure they're doing okay? And I'm like, as a Marine, I hadn't thought about that. My job was obviously something else. I hadn't really thought about doing bodyguard work, but I guess it was like a natural course, of that. So I did really well for a little bit with one person. And then another person said, hey, do you have anybody you can recommend? A lot of people didn't want to go through agencies and stuff at the time. They wanted a personal person they could trust and someone that was real, that wasn't just there to fill in space, but someone they could actually feel like they trusted a little. So pretty soon I was getting passed on from person to person to person, recommended, saying, hey, Ethan's a great guy. He's doing this, he's doing that. He's trustworthy. He's not going to screw you over. He's going to look out for your best interest. He's not a fan. He's not going to ask for autographs, things like that. And being a Marine, it entrusted a lot of people to want to approach me and say, hey, man, we'd like to give you a shot. Come hang out with us for a while. See how you do. So eventually I was filling in for people. Got to work for people like DMX, 50 Cent, good friend of mine, Victor Ortiz, who's a boxer. A lot of other people started getting passed around, and it was cool. I mean, I've even worked with people like Carrot Top and Andrew Dice Clay. So, I mean, I've been around all types of people. So it's been interesting.
You worked with 50 Cent. What's he like, man, on a personal level when the cameras aren't, on people and stuff like that? What's it like being around 50 Cent?
I get that question a lot. He's funny. He's kind of a funny dude. He jokes a lot. He is pretty humorous though in public, but he has like that dry, almost like Seinfeld kind of humor. But I mean, the dude is really smart. So that whole persona he has in public, he really likes to have a lot of fun. So when he talks business, when he's in private, um, he's on point. Like he knows what he's doing. He's another one of those guys that's just, you hang around these people that are successful and you realize they really do have a sense of humor. They're real funny. They're laid back, but they're very direct. They don't pull any punches, which is great. It's great being around real people like that. If these people were to speak the way they do in private and public, it would probably offend a lot of people, just because people nowadays don't really enjoy hearing the truth or people being honest with them. It bothers people nowadays. But that's why these people are so great at what they do and why they're so successful. They're wonderful people.
Floyd Mayweather, pretty successful dude, but every time I see him, man, it seems like I know I'm a big boxing fan. He's always on some rah-rah type of shit, right? But
he does that on purpose.
Yeah, he would introduce you as what? As his gun guy?
Gun guy. Those are the words. Gun guy. Hey, this is my gun guy. Being around his whole team, I was fortunate enough to hang around the whole TMT Russia crew. Those guys scared the shit out of me. I'm not afraid of shit in my life, but meeting these guys from Russia that were part of his TMT crew, he's got fighting teams all over the world. And these guys were like your typical badass casted person in like movies like Taken and stuff like that appear to be very scary, except for these guys actually are scary. You can tell by meeting these guys, they've been through some shit in their life. So he's got some serious people around him that are awesome. And I was fortunate enough to meet a lot of these people and spend a lot of time with these guys.
Is he on some tough guy shit though? Does he get smart with people like, yo, man, what's up? When the cameras aren't showing, or is he a nice guy? I think he comes across as, not such a nice dude, bro.
So we get that a lot, and I get a lot of that. People are like, yeah, he seems kind of cocky. He seems kind of this. He seems kind of that. Funny story. He's like that in public, and he does it on purpose. It's part of marketing. It's how he keeps that attention. It's how he gains that attention. It's how he attracts all the things that he does. We're in the gym one day. He has his own personal gym out here in Vegas. And so I brought my son in to hang out with him, and we were just kind of BSing a little bit while he's training. And so at the end of his like hour-long training, I mean, this guy is so focused. He's got like 4 or 5 cameras around him. He's focused on his training thing he's doing. Me and my son are kind of off in the corner, just, hanging out for the day with him for a little bit, just kind of in the background. At the end of the day, he sends me this crazy text message. He's like, hey, I really like those blue and white Jordans your son was wearing. And I'm like, how did you pay attention to that while you were in the middle of all that stuff? And he's like, I pay attention to everything around me. The dude is on point. Like the dude is focused with everything he does. So there's no surprise as to why he's as great as he is.
Work with anybody that was just an asshole that you could publicly say was an asshole?
There are some people that I would probably choose not to work with again. But everybody I worked with was great.
I'm assuming you don't want to talk about that stuff.
It's certain people that are in a certain type of music industry. A couple of rappers I worked with back in the day, I definitely would have to pass up again. They're great people. They're really, really big. They're incredibly successful. But if I was asked to work with them again, I probably would have to pass.
Are some of them disrespectful sometimes? Like, yo, man, I tell you, man, get your ass out of here, man. Go over there right now. You ever have people disrespectful like that?
Not to me, but I've had people in public speaking like that to other people, and they're like, I've got armed security with me. What are you going to do? And I've got to stop them and say, hey, man, just because we have guns doesn't mean we're going to get into a shootout because you want to run your mouth. So we've had to avoid stuff like that, and these are the reasons why I won't work with some of these people, because they feel like they've got armed people with them, so they have this false sense of security to kind of start shit with everybody.
Some people get like that. You see kids every day out here shooting each other, man. They got a gun. They get bold. They got, hey, I got this. I got the equalizer. What's up? And, sometimes they kill people and end up with 25, 30 years in prison. And they're like, damn, I killed that dude for no reason.
Yeah, they don't think about it. Having a gun is a very big false sense of security. It is a lot of power, but to make you think that you're somebody else because you have that, that's a whole problem within itself. And like you said, a lot of kids are doing that nowadays. And that's something that I don't know where they're getting it from. I don't know if it's the movies, I don't know if it's the music they're listening to, but I can assure you that that is not a road you want to head down. People tell us that we're badasses all the time as Marines, and I don't believe that shit. We just do the best we can, but we don't have that false sense of security. And if you think you're a tough guy because you have a gun, I would invite you to join the military and really think about, how tough you are.
So, let me talk about this, right? Because some people are probably looking at you like, man, he looks like a little dude. How big are you, man?
6'1". I measured myself or weighed myself the other day. I'm 6'1", 202.
So people looking at you, they don't know that, man. You're like a triple black belt badass dude, right?
No, it's nothing like that. I don't get into fights. I avoid stuff. I definitely do my best to talk my way out of everything. I don't like putting hands on people. It's not a thing I like to do. If I'm surrounded by 4 or 5 people and I don't have a choice, then I'll go for it. But chances are, if someone's acting like a tough guy, I'll definitely kind of try to get them to back down, just verbally, and be like, "Hey, man, like, you really don't want to do this. Like, I'll buy you a beer. How about that?" No matter what the outcome could be, it's just I would rather avoid any kind of conflict.
Okay, so there is a stereotype. You're the bodyguard. People are thinking bodyguard. He's a big badass dude. He's going to protect Lady Gaga if anything happens. Kind of tell the people why you were a bodyguard and what your function was and what you did, and then we'll get into the gun stuff.
So I do get that question, and people go, you're not 6'5", 350. And I go, yeah, I wasn't the one moving the crowds. Whenever I am working with somebody, it's more on a counter surveillance aspect. It's to kind of see things that may be coming our way initially, to then get the bigger guys that we're working with to start moving the crowd or making a hole or making sure we get going in a different direction immediately. My job is just to see things as they're happening or before they're going to happen. So it's more or less that. That's the part I play. I blend in. I wear regular clothes. I was always right next to them. I didn't really stand out too much. But that was the point. The point was just to look like a regular person and make sure things were going to be prevented.
Let's talk about the international arm dealing. Like, how do you get involved in this whole gun thing? I mean, you get this company together. You're doing this stuff. Are you still a bodyguard at the time, or are you just doing the gun thing?
So I stopped bodyguarding for a while. I became a weapons trainer for a little bit. So I was fortunate enough to be able to train a bunch of different cops and stuff like that, and all kinds of law enforcement people. So training, I'm around weapons all the time. Growing up, I've just been around guns since about the age of 5. My mom taught me how to shoot and fight growing up. My mom was Israeli Special Forces for nearly 20 years. So growing up, having a single mom like that taught her only son how to fight and shoot, I grew up typically thinking that's how most mothers in America were. And I found out later that was not the case. So I'd always been around guns growing up. So when I got to a point later in life where I'd been around them so much, I understood them a lot. I understood the science and the math behind it, and I wanted to always develop my own line of weapons. So being on the range 4 or 5 times a week, training people, being around guns as much as I have been my entire life, gave me more of the inside track to seeing how all these weapons were personally working, made. Rather than just being a gun enthusiast, I was actually using these for training. So I got to see what was the best, what was the worst, what worked, what didn't. And it more or less gave me the thought to say, hey, if I were to design one, how would I make it? If I were to make a functional weapon that was good for all sorts of necessities, like that we could possibly use, what would I make that is overall the best for all situations? So I started to think about my time in the Marine Corps and how I had this M16, and then it shortened down to an M4 a few years later. And when you're breaching warehouses and you're breaching homes and things like that, and you're going in and you have this full-size rifle, it's not feasible to have something that size. So I wanted to start designing something that was much smaller. So, I started sketching things out on a napkin on designing, compact weapons and things like that. And then I got to a point where I designed what is known today as an AR pistol. So you see those everywhere now. So I was the person that put those on LAPD motorcycles. I was the one who really got those out to the public, and people were like, holy crap, what are these things? So that's what I did. And I pretty much got behind those and started working on those, because those are the one things you can use that will give you the full power of a full-size M4, but the maneuverability and the compactness of, a micro combat urban assault weapon. So getting behind designing weapons and creating them for military and different teams like that was a passion of mine. And it was something that I just loved doing, and started doing it like 7 days a week. Pretty soon I had 5-6 different types of weapons I was creating. So
you created this AR-15 you're the creator?
I'm the reason that is what it is today. Yeah.
And now I know you sent me over some paperwork, because I looked at the paperwork, I looked at the documents.
Oh, and to be upfront, the only reason I started designing weapons, it wasn't for other people. It was literally for myself. I wanted to design a weapon that was like, hey, if I could do this, if I could have went back into the military at the time I had, what kind of weapon would I have wanted? And that is the reason I did it. It was solely for me. And I only made a few of them in the beginning. And it was kind of a problem, because I would take them out to the gun range and I'd be testing them out in between while I was training different law enforcement officers. And pretty soon they were like, what are those? Can we shoot those? Can you show us how those work? And it kind of scaled from there. So,
you end up designing all these weapons. You got a company. What was it? I mean, your license plate says AR King on it. What was the name of the company?
Earhart Industries was the name of the company. So it was my last name. My name was all over everything, and that was probably where I screwed up. So my name was on everything.
I know you sent me over paperwork with the ATF and the federal government, stuff from your discovery documents, and there's stuff going on. You redacted some of it, but like you're doing like big arm deals with like other countries, right?
Allegedly, I was thought to have been this major international arms dealer, dealing thousands and thousands of weapons to all these people in different countries. And the fact that they found all of these weapons in countries that we're not even supposed to be doing any kind of work with was just beyond me. So they pretty much were like, hey, we know you're this major international arms dealer. It was bad. Again, what I can say is that I had that whole Lord of War mentality growing up, and I was like, you know what? There's war happening all the time. There's war happening right now. Russia, Ukraine. There's always going to be something going on. Always.
Yeah, I don't really want to talk about that right now, because I don't think we're allowed to do that.
No, totally. But I'm just saying that in general, there's always some sort of conflict going on everywhere around the world. And I always looked at it going, hey, if they're going to be using these guns, why not use mine? And I have the ability to do that. And my goal was to be the biggest. You've got major companies like Lockheed Martin, which are like the biggest government contractors on the planet, making satellites and things like that. And I wasn't going to get to that level, but I wanted to be the biggest arms dealer. That was my goal, was to be the biggest on the planet.
Now you're making money, you're living a good life. Are you still doing the bodyguard thing just because it's cool, or do you get out of that line of work? What happens?
So I stopped. The problem with that is it's very sporadic. Doing bodyguard work, you can be somewhere for a week, you can be somewhere for a month, you can be somewhere for 2 days. And then again, you may not work for a week, a month, 2 days. And having, a child that I'm raising, it's one of those things where, do I leave my kid alone? Do I leave him with a babysitter? Do I do this? Do I do that? Because I didn't have any family members that lived where I lived. So it wasn't like I could call, his aunt, his uncle, grandma, grandpa. He didn't have anything like that where we were at. So there was no one I could really call. So it was really tough. So it was something I kind of had to put aside.
I mean, you're dealing in arms, you're creating firearms or whatever, but I mean, you're obviously making some money at that point, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Something like that.
But eventually the feds, now you're training law enforcement, but the feds come knocking on your door. They knock on your door. Hey, tell us how that happens and what it's like. I need you've been in the Marines. You've never been in trouble. The cops are at your door. How's it feel?
See, when you put it that way, the cops are at your door. It makes it sound like a couple of sheriffs came by, knocked
Well,
on the door.
you know what I mean. I'm figuratively speaking, but you tell us the
Yeah,
story.
but for the people that don't quite understand, when you wake up at 7 in the morning and you're getting ready for work and your entire home is surrounded by 50, 60 armed federal agents with weapons pointed right at you, it's entirely different than the police coming in and just knocking on your door and saying, hey, we want to speak to you. Shit got out of hand so quick. I mean, a few months seemed like it was a couple days when all that started going down. You really want to know how that happened?
Definitely.
So, most things in life, you can usually pinpoint them to like a starting point, like where you're like, okay, this is where shit started turning. Well, I was working on a contract for the Secret Service to design a weapon that they wanted, a custom weapon that they really wanted made. Now, for me at the time, things were going fantastic. Yeah, I had a pretty big facility. I was doing decent. Things were going well, and I'm working on this contract, trying to see how I can develop this weapon that they really wanted. And that same week, I started getting random emails from people that worked for other contractors, saying, "Hey, how are you getting this? How are you doing this? You're nobody. You're a new guy." And I pretty much figured out how to do it. There is a real website called fezbit.gov where once you become approved as a government contractor, I should send you that letter over, actually, my contracting letter that I got approved for the U.S. government. From that day, I was approved to get on this website. And again, I was up all night going through contracts, going through every possible thing I could find, big, small, everything that was available that I could possibly entertain. And when I came across a really cool one, I jumped on it. And I lowballed it so low on purpose to where I wasn't going to make a single penny initially. But to gain a contract like that would have gained me more leverage, to be able to do more and make more down the road. So upon working on this, I was being approached by other companies saying, hey, how are you doing this? Who are you? We've never heard of you. And I made it my business to not be friends with people like politicians and other people that are government contractors. So I purposely kept to myself because I don't like to make friends with people I don't know. I stick to my own circle. I keep to myself, and I don't like to get out and get in people's way. So apparently I got in someone's way doing this, and it got back to me real quick. So while I was working on that, man, how do I even transition to this? This is nuts. While I'm working on that, I get stopped one day by the ATF. I didn't know it was ATF because they were wearing cargo shorts and t-shirts and no badges and nothing, didn't identify themselves. I get snatched. I get grabbed, I get handcuffed, I get thrown in the front of a vehicle, and we're driving away before I even knew what happened. I'm like, I'm just going, who the fuck are you guys? I thought I was being kidnapped. No badges, no identification, nothing. I get taken to this building. I'm interrogated for 5, 6, 7 hours, and I have no clue what's going on. No clue. And that's when I started to realize something bad was about to happen. So a couple hours into an interrogation, they started asking me questions like, we know what you're doing. We want you to tell us what's going on. And I have no idea what is happening. I have no idea how I got to this building. I have no idea why I've just been grabbed by a group of strangers. I have no idea what's going on. As far as I'm concerned, they have the wrong guy. I'm thinking there's no way that I'm involved with the feds on this level. They already know who I am because in order for me to do what I was doing with the federal government, it's not, I was already on their radar. It's not like I was this random stranger out of left field. They were like, who is this guy? There's not many government contractors in this country. And when you get your paperwork through the ATF and all the other documents you need to even get to this point, they are very well aware of who you are almost on a first name basis because there's only a handful of people doing this shit. So I was very confused and I'm like, what is going on? And these guys are screaming at me in this interrogation. And I'm like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know who you guys are. And they're like, well, we're ATF. And I'm like, can I see a badge? Guy pulls out a badge and I'm like, I can get fucking badges. Like, I don't believe this shit. Like, this is bullshit. And the guy's like, no, this is very real. You're in a lot of trouble. I was like, well, I don't feel like I'm in a lot of trouble. I was like, I'm going to leave. And he's like, you're not going anywhere. I was like, I want an attorney then. He's like, you're not getting an attorney. And I was like, what? So he pulled out some paperwork. He's like, I need you to sign this. These are your Miranda rights. I was like, I'm not signing shit. I was like, I want an attorney. And he's like, you're not getting an attorney. Stop asking for one. We need you to sign this paperwork and we need you to speak to us now. And I'm like, no, not doing it. It's not happening. I got these two fat guys sitting in front of me. I don't believe they're cops. I don't believe they're feds. I don't believe anything they're telling me because they just don't come off to even appear to be feds. So one of the guys goes, hey, why don't you believe that we're real feds? And so I was like, you ever seen any movie with The Rock where he plays a cop? He's in shape. Most people that are cops, are in shape. Most people that are feds look like they're in shape. They don't look like fat pieces of shit like you. And they lost their fucking
Like
mind.
me.
Like they, huh?
Like me? No, I'm just messing with you.
Not you. Not you. No, these guys did not come off as fed types at all. They didn't look like it. They looked like they couldn't run to the end of the block to save their life. So I didn't believe anything they were saying. And they were starting to throw things at me like, oh, we know you're trafficking weapons. We know you're an arms dealer. We know you're selling meth. And I'm like, wait, hold on. I was like, now you've crossed the line because I've never even seen meth in my life except for like on TV. I wouldn't even know what it looks like. And he's like, oh, we know you're trafficking weapons for your people. And I was like, hold on, my people? What are my people? He's like, we know you're trafficking weapons to Mexico. I go, first of all, I'm not Hispanic. I was like, my family's from Israel. I'm Middle Eastern. And he's like, oh, and I have some Hebrew writing on my arm and stuff. And he goes, well, what does that say? And I go, well, that's in Hebrew. I go, that's not Spanish. So I don't know where you would have gotten any of this information from. And before I knew it, everything started to derail. Like their whole train of thought was lost. They didn't know what they were asking me anymore. They left me in this room for like 3-4 hours. So I pretty much just climbed on the table and took a nap until they came and woke me up, And then they took me back home, which was weird. And they dropped me off. Well, I get home and my entire house is upside fucking down. Everything wall to wall, room to room is in my living room in a pile like shoulder high. Everything I possibly owned is just dumped. It looked like Hurricane Katrina had hit my home. So I knew they ran through my house. Whatever they were looking for, they didn't find. My son was home. They woke him up at gunpoint. Apparently they took my house key, got into my house, didn't announce themselves. And my son told me the whole thing that happened when I got back to the house. He's like, Dad, he goes, that was like the scariest shit I've ever experienced in my life. He's like, I get nudged by someone's gun. I roll over and I got like a bunch of guns in my face. And he's like, I get dragged outside. He goes, and I watched them tear apart the whole fucking house. He goes, I don't know what they were looking for, but they didn't leave with anything.
Let me ask you this. So that day you get away, but eventually you're arrested. You're charged in federal court. What are you charged with in federal court?
So they couldn't get me on any charges. So one of the documents I sent you shows that I allegedly threatened federal agents. It's one of the documents that you have that's like literally like 3 or 4 sentences. And if you take a look at what that threat is, you'll probably start laughing because that's what the judge did. So the feds couldn't get me in custody. So 2 of the federal agents that were texting me went down to our local police department, didn't tell them they were feds, and said, this guy is threatening our lives and want to press charges. So they said that I was threatening their lives. I got picked up by what's called the CAT team, the criminal apprehension team. I get put into custody, into state custody. They couldn't get me in fed custody because there was nothing they had on me. So once they got me into state custody for allegedly threatening these 2 gentlemen who were federal agents, they had me in custody. Then it was easy for them. So I sat in county jail for about a month and a half. And then the feds transferred me. Again, I still had no charges. I had nothing. So I get transferred to a Marshall facility where I'm sitting 5, 6, 7 months, still waiting on charges. So one day I get woken up, and this is right as COVID was about to take off. And, I get handcuffed, shackled, thrown in a van, taken downtown, and I go to court. And they're like, you're here to say the magistrate. And I was like, the fuck is a magistrate? I'm so new to this stuff. I don't know what any of this is. So I'm like, so I go in there. I screw up. I'm talking to the judge, and I was like, Your Honor. They're like, no, it's a magistrate, blah, blah, blah. And so I slip up and I was like, yes, Your Majesty. And the judge was like, no, 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 Your Honor is fine. Like, just ate that shit up. And I was like, okay, this is crazy. I was like, they're like, well, we're superseding you today. And I'm like, what does that mean? They're like, you're being charged with international arms dealing, international arms trafficking. You're looking at a maximum of 60 years in federal prison. And like immediately when I heard that, I just about shit myself. I was like, wait, what is going on? Because I haven't seen any paperwork. I haven't seen anything. There was no complaint. There was nothing. There was no warrants in my case. Not a single thing. So I'm like, yeah, I'm good. And they were like, what do you mean you're good? They're like, how do you plead? I was like, I don't. And they're like, you have to plead guilty or not guilty. And I was like, I plead no contest. And they said, you can't do this. This isn't the state. In the feds, you only have guilty or not guilty. I said, well, then I don't plead either. And they're like, you have to plead. So I started to walk away and the marshals grabbed me. I was like, fuck this, I'm done. So they grabbed me, dragged me back to the table. And my lawyer's like, Ethan, dude, you need to calm down. I was like, you know what? Fuck you. Fuck the judge. Fuck this prosecutor. I was like, fuck everything that everyone's going on. And like, they just started screaming at me in court. And they're like, you need to calm down. I was like, no, all of you fuckers need to calm down because this is bullshit. I was like, I haven't done anything wrong. I haven't done anything illegal. I haven't done anything that you can prove that I've done. Have I done something that you can prove? I would have seen it. You would have had paperwork in front of me. You're charging me with international arms dealing? Where's the proof that I did this? Oh, we found hundreds of thousands of weapons and blah, blah, blah in countries all around the world. I was like, can you prove that it was me that brought those weapons there? And the prosecutor is like flipping out, yelling at the judge. And I'm like, and I lean over and I was like, excuse me, sir. I was like, this is shit up. And the judge was like, who are you? I'm like, the prosecutor. And they're like, that's a woman. And from there, everything went downhill. Like, it was just so bad. I didn't know it was a female. She got super offended, was like, I'm going to throw the book at you. In all fairness, she looked like Macaulay Culkin, like super short blonde haircut, looked like a young boy. I didn't know if it was a woman or not. I was just angry. And I was like, fuck this. So, and half the ATF squad was in the court. Like, all the feds were there. They really wanted to see me get put away. It was bad. It was real bad.
So they made this big case. That doesn't end up happening. You do end up going to federal prison, though, right? You're only sentenced to a little bit of time. It's kind of like a nonsense. At the end of the day, it was a nonsense case, right? So you end up going to federal prison. What was your sentence?
So what was you want to know what I was charged with?
Well, I'll probably pull up the docket. Maybe I'll post it.
So what you have in front of you, you won't find online. What you'll find online when you Google my name is not going to be even remotely close to what that is. And there's a reason for that. They don't want this to be out there. Because this can unravel a lot of crap. So they did their very best to bury this. So I refused to plead for anything. I went through like 3 attorneys. I refused. All the proof that I was a government contractor was there. All the proof that I was making weapons for the military was there. A lot of that helped me out. Now, whoever is above the ATF, there's not many people there. Whoever's above them were the ones to tell them to back off. So it went from like night and day. It went from me looking at 60 years in federal prison for international arms dealing, international arms trafficking, dealing with all these major heads of like militaries in other countries and shit, to almost immediately throwing the whole thing out. And still can't tell you how that happened. However, what I can say is that at the end of the day, I was not charged with that. Within a matter of what seemed like hours, all the charges were dropped. We went back to zero. So I'm still sitting in the feds, waiting. I'm there for like 18 months just waiting. Then finally they come and they say, all right, this new prosecutor wants to offer you a deal. And I said, what new prosecutor? They said, well, you're his first case. I go, what happened to the other prosecutor that's been doing this for 20 years that wanted to nail my ass to the wall along with all the other feds? They said, well, they stopped what they were doing. And I said, why? And then my attorney said, you don't want to know why. I said, no, I'm really curious as to know why. I was looking at 60 years and suddenly it all vanished. I'm very curious as to know why. And she said, Ethan, I can't tell you much more than you pissed off the wrong people. And I said, who are the wrong people? She said, whoever it is, it's above the feds. And you pissed off some very, very big fucking people. I said, all right. I'd love to meet these people. And she goes, you muttered, you're best goal right now, your best bet is to sign this deal and walk the fuck away back to your life. I said, you know what? I don't have a life anymore. Everything was taken from me. I've lost everything. My son just graduated high school. Fortunately, he was done with school by the time I was arrested. So I didn't screw up too bad. But it got to a point where at the end of the day, they offered me a deal. And they said, hey, you're the only one really in your case. We don't have anyone else in this. There's no CIs. There's none of this weird common stuff that I'd heard from other cases being locked up. Everybody in prison telling me about their cases going, hey, man, you don't have this in your case. You don't have that. I'm like, no. And they're like, why is your shit super sealed? And I was like, because of what's involved in it, and the level of what I was doing. They don't want this out there. So it was really weird. And I was learning about other people's cases, and I was realizing that mine was nothing like your common case. So, and this is also how I gained a lot of friends, a lot of acquaintances while I was in, and I was able to get along with virtually everyone on the yard once they found out who I was and what my background was in my line of work. So at the end of the day, I was given a 24-month sentence. And it was dropped down to filing a document incorrectly. Now, this document doesn't exist, but I did almost 3 years. Mind you, I did almost 3 years on a 24-month sentence. Now, as you know, in the feds, every year you get 2 months of good time knocked off. So on a 24-month sentence, I should have done about 20 months. However, I did closer to 3 full years. It was bad. I mean, I spent quite a bit of time in solitary confinement. It was a lot of shit was just happening. But they did their absolute best to blame my attorney for a lot of things. They didn't want to give me my good time. I got no early time. I got nothing. I got extended time. And there was not one single possible thing I could do to get one moment shaved off of my sentence. Not a half a second. Nothing. I couldn't program. They wouldn't allow me to do anything.
Listen,
and they made sure
you're out of prison now, and you were in Sanford, not really too violent or anything like that, but you're out now. What are you doing now with your life, man?
Well, I just got released in August, and I was the halfway house for a while. So I actually just got physically to my home that I'm in now. I just got here in January, like the end of January. So I've literally been home for a couple months. However, I've managed to get back into working and doing social media marketing. I got real good at that prior to my arrest. That's how I got my brand as big as I did to the public. Great at blowing people's pages up. Great at working with a ton of celebrities and making them large fan bases and stuff. I've now been able to adapt that to businesses and help businesses thrive. I have a new marketing book coming out this summer, and the book is called Fucking Marketing. It is the true story of an international arms dealer and how my level of marketing landed me in federal prison, ultimately, being as big as I got, and how it can benefit other businesses. So I wrote a book that pretty much explains how I've made money from day one as a kid. My first job I had at 11 years old making money, and how I learned marketing growing up, and how I got to where I'm at now, and how it can benefit other people. So now that's pretty much what I'm doing. And as you know, just taking it day by day and just kind of rebuilding my life when you get out, it's definitely tough. It's
definitely not easy, but listen, man, I think you got a hell of a story. You sent me over the documents. I looked at a bunch of that stuff. Maybe I'll post it in the video if you don't mind. But I mean, hey, listen, I appreciate you coming on the show, right? We talked.
Absolutely.
It's nice to know about, a little stuff about the celebrities. Some people might want to be interested in that, and what it was for you, arms dealing, your marketing book. We're going to see what kind of marketer you are. We'll see how many views this video gets. We'll see if you push it a little bit.
I'm definitely excited. I'm going to repost this. I've had a couple magazines reach out to me about doing interviews. You're the first one I'm sitting down with to actually speak to, just because of your background, where you've came from, and who this would appeal to. So this is definitely something that took me a long time to wrap my head around. And I'm not going to lie to you. When I was first getting out, a buddy of mine on the inside said, what are you going to do when you get out? I said, there's a good chance I may change my name and hide from this. And he's like, why? He goes, it's going to be on your shoulder the rest of your life. You're going to be constantly thinking about this unless you face it and go, hey, yep, this is exactly who I was. This is what I did. I was embarrassed by it. I'm not going to lie. I went to federal prison. It's embarrassing getting locked up because you get out and people find out you're a felon, and you get that stigma where people just judge you, and people are like, holy crap. But to be honest with you, it did not go that way. Most people found out and they were like, Ethan, I know what kind of dude you are. I know who you really were. And, I'm still here for you. I still got your back. If you need something, let me know. And I was like, I appreciate that. And a lot of people were more understanding than I could have imagined. I got inside my head thinking, well, shit, I might as well have felons stamped across my forehead, thinking that I'm kind of a piece of shit now. And I realize I'm not. A lot of people welcome me with open arms again.
I always try to give people a little lesson, right, in all of our videos, but that's it right there. I think that's what your story is, man. Look, man, you're more than just a felon, bro. You made, maybe not in your case, but in many cases we make, bad choices and we go to prison, but, a bunch of us change our character. We change how we act, how we think. We learn to appreciate our freedom. We learn to appreciate the things that the framers found important, right? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And we come out here and we change our lives, man. And that felon stamp across your forehead doesn't define you. You know what I mean? And I think dudes that are watching, there's a lot of felons that watch this show. Don't let that define you. Go out there and achieve great things, man, because they're able to do that. People are able to do that.
Yeah, and you're told almost, I think it's society that kind of puts it on us that says, once you become a felon, you're fucked. Like that's kind of the stigma about it. And when I was in, I told myself while I was doing time that I was going to try to accomplish something. So while I was in, I actually was able to teach a business class for about 6 months. And I had all these guys, I'm talking like some of the biggest, drug dealers, all kinds of people doing, 20, 30, 40 years for shit they've done. And were coming to me asking me about, hey, man, how can I have a legitimate business? Like, what can I legitimately do with my life and not be this person and come back here? So for about 6 months, I taught a business class and really tried to give back what I knew as a business owner and how I grew my business, and try to give back to, my fellow inmates that were eventually going to get out and needed to get back on their feet and weren't sure what to do. And I was really hoping that I could have given them something to really think about, to where they could get out and not fuck around and come back. Because I realized that was not a place I wanted to be. 1 day, 1 year, 20 years, it is not a place you want to be.
No doubt, man. Listen, I definitely appreciate you coming on. I'm going to get ready to close the show. Tell everybody,
Absolutely.
Man, with respect, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, share the video. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll be back tomorrow. Blood on the Razor Wire TV. We're out.